This is Andi Purewal for Boxing Social in association with Betfred, and I'm delighted to be joined by trainer Shane McGuigan out here in Cleveland. Shane, first and foremost, how are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Not long in, just been waiting for my room to be cleared, so I finally got the go-ahead, and yeah, looking forward to getting settled in. It's been a long journey, but yeah, excited to be out here in Cleveland, fight week. I'm looking forward to it.
Obviously, we're used to seeing yourself and Rob Tebbett conduct these interviews. I think it's only the second time I've done an interview with you for Boxing Social. Obviously, Rob back in the UK is unfortunately ill, so wish him the best with getting better, as I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, exactly. I heard he had a collapsed lung, so thoughts are with him. I texted him a bit this morning, he's responded. So, yeah, it's a bit of a shock, but, you know, needs to start looking after himself. And, yeah, we always give him a bit of digs about it, but he does need to start looking after himself.
I'll leave that one for you, Shane, to discuss with him. Don't want to get myself in trouble. But moving forward and on to the show this week, obviously Daniel Dubois, your heavyweight charge returns against Joe Cusumano. Just reflect on the camp for me, and what in particular, since you and Daniel have linked up, has impressed you the most? What subtle changes have you made which you think go under the radar that the general public may not have noticed?
Well, I've been working on his speed a lot. Everyone keeps banging on about his head movement and stuff like that, but he's got very good feet, and I don't think if you start slipping and dipping and you're a heavyweight, you're staying in range. So for me, it's been working on his legs. As the first line of exit is to drop in and out of distance, to just neglect or negate people's punches. And then just, you know, with that, just working on his speed. You know, sometimes he has a habit of leaving the shots in and loading up, and he's so heavy-handed. All he has to do is half hit these guys. So he'll be working on a lot of stuff, and hopefully he can showcase that on Sunday.
Daniel's still very, very young and at such an early stage of his career. You mentioned how heavy-handed he is. Do you think that's just been a mentality of his, that when he's headed into fights, he's known he has the power to not just hurt, but potentially stop the majority of the heavyweight scene, which is something which is relied on potentially a bit too much, especially, for example, the Joe Joyce fight? Definitely.
You know, he everything he hits generally does go to sleep. It's like he's been through so many sparring partners in this one, and it's incredible. I've never had a guy knock so many people out in sparring. It's horrific. But at the same time, he needs to learn how to be able to work with people rather than just constantly looking to get frustrated and then load up and then bang them out, because that's not what you're going to learn. There's a 5% of the heavyweight division, or not even 5%. There's 5 of the heavyweight division that's able to take that away from you, and then you come unstuck. So he's done a lot of rounds with Lawrence Okolie in this camp. And Lawrence wasn't one of the people that's gone to sleep, but you know he's done some great work. You know, the two of them, and someone like Lawrence is actually able to maneuver him around and make him really think and switch on. So, yeah, there's a lot of stuff to work with Dan, but at the same time, you know, I have to put conditions on the sparring and stuff, because if not, he just keeps bowling them over, and it's not really learning anything, because we know he can knock people out. We just need to learn on how to, you know, make that transition from long range to short range, and then when you get in there, not link arms and engage with people. You need to be able to keep your hands free and then work away. So there's been some positive stuff in camp, and I think, you know, it's not going to be an overnight process with Dan. He's going to be a slow builder, but as you mentioned, it's the fact that he's 23 years of age. He'll be 24 in September. He's only a baby, and he's got so much to sort of be able to work on and progress.
Joe Cusumano, the man in the opposite corner to Daniel on Sunday night rather, a bit of an unknown quantity to those certainly back in the UK. What type of challenges do you think he will pose to Daniel that he should be looking forwards to and looking to overcome?
He's got reasonably heavy hands, and he comes to fight. You know, you can never really, you know, sleep on guys like that. You can't switch off. But you know, I believe Dan's going to take him out. Hopefully it goes 3, 4, 5 rounds so we can get some rounds in. But you know, there's levels in boxing. I believe that Dan's many levels above him, and this is a showcase for us to come out here and show what Daniel Dubois is really made of. and everyone in America wants to see knockouts, everyone in the UK wants to see knockouts, and that's something that Dan delivers, and hopefully we get another one.
Given the card as well, Jake Paul, Tyron Woodley, in Jake Paul's case, a huge YouTube star, as it were, social media star. The exposure for Daniel could be immense on Sunday. Is that something which you all as a team are keen to capitalise on, for as much as you might want the rounds? In this case and in this fight, to expose him more so to the American audience, a knockout would look a lot better.
Exactly. It's not really a boxing audience, is it? It's a different audience. It's like kids and YouTube fans. So they're not boxing aficionados. They just want to see brutality, and I think that's what we're going to get on Sunday with Cusumano. I think he's going to come and be game, and he's going to walk into punches and get stopped.
Beyond this, who would you like to see Daniel face? I've seen a few names float about that you've mentioned. So is there anybody in particular you have at the top of that list?
Well, it's down to Frank and Martin and myself to sit down and sort of map out after this one. There's obviously Dan's well ranked at the WBA. He's the interim champion. You got Trevor Bryant, who's the WBA regular champion. You got Joe Joyce, who's the WBO. Is he the interim or something like that? He's highly ranked with the WBO. So we'll see what goes on with AJ Usyk. See who wins that one. I believe that AJ will win it, and obviously you've got October 9th with Fury versus Wilder as well. So it's constantly just a bit of a waiting game. There's plenty of fights out there. There's lots of Derek Chisora, there's lots of Dylan White. Those guys sitting in Joseph Parker. You've got Andi Ruiz. You've got guys that are former world champions that are really, really hard fights, and fights that I think Dan needs to. If you can't get the top boys, why not go for those guys?
It's very interesting to hear you mention those types of names, Shane, because in Daniel's case he has mentioned Dillian and Derek, but to see you rattle off a lot of those guys who just fall beneath that world level, it's an interesting take. Are you confident that Daniel's ready to face one of those guys now?
I believe so, yeah. I believe in 6 months to 12 months time. I mean, he's just not going to get tested until he does face those guys. I mean, he's already faced Joe Joyce. He was up on the cards and lost on a fractured eye. And I thought Joe was coming into the fight. If it had gone 12, I'm not sure Dan would have won it. But he's now got to go back, progress, learn, and But he's at least proved that he's in and around that level. And Joe Joyce is an Olympic silver medalist. He should have been an Olympic gold medalist. You got people like Tony Yoko, who's about to fight Peter Milas as well. You got loads of guys that are on the way up. But they're all going to have to fight each other because there's only 4 belts, and there's a load of fighters that need to earn their keep, almost need to earn their shot, and why not fight each other to get into that position?
Just before we move forwards from Sunday's card, I do want to get your thoughts on that headline fight. What do you make of seeing the YouTubers crossing over into boxing, and in this case, Jake Paul versus an MMA or former MMA fighter in Tyron Woodley?
Yeah, I don't really know much about Tyron Woodley, to be honest. I'm not a massive UFC fan, but I know that Robbie Davies is he's been telling me about how good Tyron Woodley is at stand up. He's pretty good. He says the size is going to be a big factor. I haven't seen them face to face. I'm sure I'll see them around the hotel this week. But yeah, the rumor is that Jake Paul's a novice, but he can punch a bit. And he's quite an athletic bloke, and at least he's chucking himself into the actual full training. And I'm not sure if he's 100% committed like what my fighters are, but if he's 80% of what my fighters train at, then he's at least making a good go of it. It is frustrating that people like him are getting all the limelight, and you've got kids that are in the gym for 15, 18, 20 years that don't get this sort of level of exposure. But at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. He's gone out there and put himself in that position with the YouTube. So you can only just appreciate it, and the fact that he's bringing a lot of attention towards boxing, and he's bringing a new audience. So hopefully, we can put on a great performance on the undercard and steal a lot of eyeballs.
Now, I do want to touch on Robbie Davis Jr. as you mentioned him there. Obviously, recent link up between the pair of you. I was trying to think of topics you and Rob haven't covered because you did 6 interviews over a space of 2 weeks. I don't think you covered that one. No. Touch on that for me, where the link up came from, and how excited are you to be the man to help guide him back onto the right track and trying to get him towards that world level that he's confident he can push beyond?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Robbie Robbie reached out to me through Fowler, and I'd met Robbie a lot of times throughout the shows. I've always thought he was a great guy. I always thought he had a lot of potential as well. He just has been fighting the wrong style for himself. You know, he's been trying to have fights with people like Lewis Ritson, trying to have stand-up sort of toe-to-toe sort of trade-offs, rather than just using his actual ability, and that's his boxing and counter-punching. And seeing him in the gym all the time, he is a good counter-puncher. He's got fantastic movement. He's got fast hands. And he just, he's got lots to work on. And you know, he split with his management as well, and he sort of reached out, and I said, look, this is an opportunity that, you know, I can't promise you the world. I can take you on and do my best for you, and I believe that we can get the likes of Lewis Ritson rematch, hopefully, and we can, you know, he's been a British, Commonwealth and European, so he's achieved a lot, but we can get him in the position that if a belt does become vacant, then we can try and fight for a world title. And he needs credible wins before that. Obviously, he needs a year, maybe 2 years of like decent fights. We tried to get the James Tennyson fight for the October the 9th bill, but I'm not sure what happened there. I think Tennyson's maybe going to stay at lightweight, or he was having some troubles. So that fight sort of fell through, and Eddie promised us that he's going to get us on the card. And even if it means that we get a run out, then we want a decent fight before the end of the year.
I just want to get your thoughts on his defeat to Gabriel Valenzuela. He had some disagreements with Dom in the corner, and didn't necessarily kind of go to what the instructions Dom was giving him. As his trainer now, what did you make of those interactions, and have you spoken to Robbie about kind of that type of relationship, and if anything like that was to happen?
I think that's a discussion between Dom and Robbie, that they sort of had their, Dom had his idea of why he was doing that, and Robbie just didn't feel comfortable. So that was just a dispute between the two of them. Personally, I think he just didn't look at the races, and Venezuela's a decent puncher. That he just looked a little bit lost after a few rounds, and it's a bit of a shit position to be in sometimes when you're boxing on there's no crowd. You're not feeling the best, and you're already a load of rounds down, and you're trying to get into the groove, and that's just frustrating. That's just boxing. But it's all about being comfortable. It's all about being happy in the gym and making sure that you're trying to work on making yourself the best possible fight, and putting yourself in the best opportunities to sort of win fights.
Moving forwards, Lawrence Okolie officially announced for the AJ undercard. Dubois-Prasovic, his mandatory challenger. I don't know particularly too much about him, so can you fill us in on what he will bring in this bout for Lawrence?
Well, he's a WBO mandatory. He's sort of got himself into the position. We tried to get him to have pay him step aside money, because Lawrence is in a rush to get through the cruiserweight division before he moves up into the either bridgerweight or onto the world scene at heavyweight. So he didn't take that. He's got quite a decent backer. He's got quite a lot of money behind him, and they even offered to bring Lawrence out to wherever he's from, I think Montenegro, and but obviously that's not where we were going to go. But with that being said, we've got to get rid of him. We've got to. He's quite a elusive, sort of like low hands. But he's not normally that style would work well if you got the height, and he's only about 6'2". He looks like he's decent hand speed and decent puncher, but he'll struggle to hit Lawrence, I believe, and I think it's not gonna be a. It might be a tricky fight for 4 or 5 rounds, but once Lawrence lands on him, he'll put him out.
I mean, given that he wasn't willing to step aside, does that give you confidence that he's actually coming to try to win, whether he does or not? This is another question, but he's actually coming.
Yeah, I mean, these guys, it is their world title fight. It's their massive opportunity. If he can win it, then it's huge. But we got to use this as not taking our foot off the gas now. I want Lawrence to box in September the 25th, and then box before the end of the year in December. I want him to box either Makabu or Bradis. I've stated it many times that people might say it's a bit bold, but I think even scrap Makabu. Let's just go straight in with Bradis, because he's the guy, he's the man. And if we can beat him and not beat him in a year's time or 2 years' time, we'll beat him now. So then people say Lawrence Okolie's #1 in the division.
And then one final fight, because I think you touched on it with Rob. Anthony Fowler, Liam Smith, October 9th in Liverpool. A big step up for Anthony.
Yeah.
So why did you guys decide to take this fight at this stage of his career?
because nobody else wanted to take the fight. That's the truth. You know, and people might say they did, and they, you know, oh, this and that, but they didn't. Domestically, they didn't. I mean, Scott Fitzgerald. It's sad to see he's not in the gym again. Yeah, that was something that Anthony stalled his career for, and really wanted to avenge that defeat. But Ted Cheeseman, he's got his plans. He's like, I'm not going to slag Ted Cheeseman because he's done it the hard way. He's earned his respect, and he had a grace period where he could have boxed Fowler, but he didn't. He chose to box Troy Williamson. So, which, if I'm Ted Cheeseman, I think Troy Williamson is an easier fight, much easier fight than Anthony Fowler. But it's still a hard fight, and I believe Williamson could beat him. So, could have shot himself in the foot there. But, you know, Liam Smith he's the number one. He is. And he's a former world champion. He's boxed Canelo. He's had the huge nights. He's got something to prove. It allows Anthony to sort of just catapult his way up as a star, not just in Liverpool, but, you know, on the domestic scene in terms, and on the world scene. Because if he beats Liam Smith, then everyone in the division worldwide is going to know his name. So, and I believe he's going to do it. I think it's going to be a hard fought 12 rounds, but I believe we're going to do it. I think Liam seems to think he's only a 4-round fighter or something like that, but we'll see, because he's really improved. And, you know, Liam's not going to say his best days are behind him, because we're preparing for the best, you know, Liam Smith. But I even think that, you know, the Fowler that I'm seeing in the gym, he needs to know his capabilities. He needs to know himself, and sometimes he doesn't. You've got certain fighters that I've worked with over the years that are so body aware that they know that what their attributes are. They know where their weaknesses are. They know when they're fighting out of themselves. Right? You get these fighters that they're fighting at too high of a pace and they can't sustain it, and then they start getting ragged, and then they start getting reckless, and then they get vulnerable and tired. But you need to learn that you're not. You know, you're not a machine. He calls himself the machine, but he's not a machine. You have to be selective, and you have to, you know, box when you want to box. You don't get forced into fighting at a certain pace that someone's going to put on you. So, you know, and I believe that it's clicking with him now. It really is, because he's so heavy-handed, and he needs to use variety in his punches rather than doing the same thing all the time. But I'm seeing it all the time, and I believe he's going to do it.
Just one thing on Liam Smith. I spoke to him the day after the fight was announced. He said, as you said there, for some reason people think Anthony's only a 4 or 5 round fighter. Liam said he thinks after 4 or 5 rounds he'll gradually break him down and be able to walk through him. He said that with a Rico Mueller fight, he believes that when Anthony was saying he wanted to get the rounds in, that was just a sign of him saying he's preparing for a long, hard fight with Liam. Just get your thoughts on those comments.
I mean, if there's someone that can go through the gears, it's Liam Smith. You know, he does, you know, block well. He catches, he drops back well. He's got a very good defence. He's not a massive power puncher, but guys like that, they've got power in the 3rd, 4th shot, and they can put you under pressure and sustain it. And he's got a fantastic chin. He takes a good body shot as well. I know he got dropped with a body shot with Canelo, but he's a robust lad. So this is a huge test for Fowler. It's a massive test, but it's one that I believe that if he boxes the right way, he'll beat him. And Rico Mueller was, you know, wasn't a bad performance, but, you know, Fowler spent 3 days in the hospital like the weekend before, and he wasn't really up for it. The opponent changed, and, you know, boxing a guy that was a welterweight coming up, and he just felt like there was no fear in it. He felt his power, and he just went through the motions a little bit. But one thing that, if you look back on the Adam Harper fight, Fowler was doing all the right things early on, but then he fell into a pattern, and he couldn't go through the gears to stop him. Whereas in the Rico Mueller fight, he just went through the gears. It took him long enough to just actually, you know, force himself to do it. But when he did, he didn't get reckless. He was picking his shots well, and he went through the gears, and he was throwing a lot of hard, heavy shots there. And you know, it's going to be more of the same when it comes to Liam Smith.
Final thing, Shane, just because it happened this past weekend, Manny Pacquiao's defeat to your Dubois-Cusumano. I don't know whether you caught it or not. If you did, your thoughts, and also just the potential retirement of a ring legend and one of the greatest boxers of certainly our generation.
Yeah, an absolute legend, and not just a legend in Manny Pacquiao, a legend in Freddie Roach and Manny Pacquiao. That duo is it's amazing how it's stood up throughout the years. I know they had a few years apart, but it's sad to see that story come to an end. It's sad to see Manny Pacquiao potentially story come to an end, especially at the world level. He might have 1 or 2 exhibitions or something like that, which I think he's more than he's more than allowed to do so, because the fact that he was going to box Errol Spence the other night is mad. It's absolutely bonkers. He's got so much cojones and balls, but Father Time's catching up, and he's not able to pull the trigger. He just wasn't there. So I think reflecting on his career, it's some amazing. I mean, I think I was only getting into boxing when he was. I was only getting into boxing when he was already world champion, and I mean, so the fact that I've done a bit of boxing myself, packed it in, and then gone into coaching, and he's still been boxing the whole way through it. It's incredible. So what a phenomenal fighter, and I think we won't see a person like that in this generation.
Well, Shane, you asked for 10 minutes. I've taken 21 minutes. I'm sorry for that, Shane. I appreciate your time, though. I'll catch you at a workout. Thanks, Beats Boxing Social.
Cheers, Andy. Thanks, mate.